What's happening, folks? Welcome back to the 182 News Podcast. This is your host, poppincurbs, and today we are joined by a very special guest, Andrew, the proud owner of therockshowvan. Yes, the original rock show van that was in the music video. Andrew here found it and is in the process of restoring it. Andrew, how's it going?
I'm awesome, man. How are you?
I am doing great. I just could not wait to pick your brain on this. I remember seeing pictures of this surfacing online, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago, and I feel like it was just sitting in a junkyard or like under a tree or something. And at the time, the fan base was chattering a little bit saying, somebody needs to restore this. Where can we find this? I want to buy that. But then it kind of died off for a couple years, and I really hadn't thought about it too much until all of a sudden, a few months back, there's a new Instagram page at therockshowvan. It's blowing up. I see people sharing it like crazy, and you and your girlfriend Taylor tracked down the rock show van and are in the process of restoring it. So to start out, how the heck did you find this thing?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, it was posted. My first knowledge of it being posted was 2020. I think someone had, or shortly before, like someone had recognized or seen it like out their office window. And this was in Sacramento. So I think it was just a normal dude working his day job and kind of saw it in what was actually a body shop, but more of a junkyard. I don't think it was actually like a functioning body shop anymore. And it was just kind of sitting there, mainly being used for storage, which is actually very effective storage. It's basically a big empty metal box, right? So it'd been sitting there, but you could still see the details on the rear. The take off your pants and jacket details are almost entirely intact. And then you could see kind of the shadow or the outline of the blink-182 on either side. So it popped up there. Someone posted it online. And like you said, there was chatter. Somebody always said, someone's got to restore this. Somebody started GoFundMe, something like that. And at that point, it turned into alternative press had picked it up as a story. I don't know if it ever got printed, but it was online. And people talked about it for a while. I think people had actually gone out to see it a few times and just decided it was too rough to restore it. And one day I saw it and just couldn't get it out of my head. But nobody would actually say where it was. People mentioned it was in Sacramento somewhere. That was about all the information anyone was willing to share about it. And ultimately, we used Google Maps to track down where it was, Street View. So we, just context clues, some of the buildings around it, some of the trees around it, some of the signs you could see in some of the photos. Just kind of narrowing that down, and also using the alternative press article to learn a bit more about the history and kind of like where it was before the junkyard. That helped us narrow it down, and then we could kind of figure out like a general area, which was Southeast Sacramento. And eventually we found it on Street View, and you could see from the Street View the Blink-182 letters on the side of the van. And so that's how we knew, like, that's it, that's the one. And from there we figured out who owned the business that it was sitting at, and went from there.
Oh my God, I did not know you had to be a detective to get this.
Nobody wanted to say where it was. I don't know if it was to protect the owner's privacy, which I get. You don't want to post someone like the exact location and contact info online, but nobody would say where it was. So yeah, we had to kind of sleuth a little bit.
So you got in touch with the shop owner or business owner. I mean, Was he looking to sell it? Was he shocked that you had found him?
So we weren't the first people to contact him. So he knew something was up, and he asked, why do we want this van? The question was, are you a member of this band? And of course he said, no, I'm not a member of Blink-182. And he said, why do you want it? I just said, they've been my favorite band my whole life, and it's something special to me. It's kind of iconic. So I told him what it was. I tried to explain, the history of it a little bit. I told him it was in a music video. I told him the band was very popular. But he was, I think at that point, kind of frustrated with people inquiring about it. Not that it was a ton of people, but, you get 1 or 2 people come to see it. And again, he had been using it as storage. And so every time someone would come to see it, he'd clear it all out. And then they'd pass on it because it was too rough, it was too beat up, and he'd had to load all his stuff back up in there. And so I think he was kind of sick of people asking about it. So at this point, he was like, look, I'm not cleaning it out unless you buy it, unless I'll clear it out. I'll clean it once you give me a check. And so, yeah, we were kind of willing to buy it under any circumstances and in any condition. And so that's what we did.
And where are you located at?
We're in Austin, Texas.
So you had to commit to this thing and fly out there without really having even ever seen it.
Yeah, we actually didn't even fly out there. We bought it sight unseen. So it was just kind of a point where it's like, we knew it was rough. We knew it was bad. And you just kind of accept it. And there's not much more to it. Like if you just accept that it's probably really rough and it needs a lot of work, then there really was no need to fly out there and see it in person. So the owner wanted us to fly out, go to the DMV. We eventually convinced them, like, no, we can just do all this through the mail. We wanted to do e-signature. He wouldn't do it. He's kind of an old school dude. And so we mail paperwork back and forth. We have ourselves a handwritten bill of sale on notebook paper. And he sent us some paperwork. We signed it, mailed it back with a check. And he sent us the title. And then we arranged for a pickup. So the first time we saw it was when it came around the corner into our neighborhood, which is actually on film, and that was cool because I kind of remember the magic of it pulling around the corner. That was my first time seeing it in person.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was the first time you'd ever seen it. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a cool moment, especially after like tracking it down, all the negotiations with the seller, booking the transport. It actually moved from Sacramento to LA for like a couple of weeks when the transport was looking for another shipment to bring to make it worth his time. So like all this had just built up, and it felt like it was taking forever and ever. And it was, again, this whole time kind of this, like, in my mind, kind of this larger than life thing that we couldn't believe we were getting. And then sure enough, it pulls around the corner and there it is, and it's ours. And that was cool.
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess you're a pretty big Blink fan, tracking this puppy down and working so hard on it. When did you become a Blink fan? And is that ultimately what inspired you to do this?
Yeah. So one of my first memories of hearing a song on the radio was All the Small Things. I'm sure I had heard stuff before that, but that was my first memory. When I think back on it, I don't remember anything before that on the radio. And it was my brother, who's about 20 years older than me, was coming to visit, and we picked him up from the airport. And this was probably 1998 or so, 1999. We picked him up from the airport, and he said something that, I don't know, he was an older brother, he was picking on me. He was sitting in the front seat. I don't know, he pissed me off. I don't remember what he said, but I was upset with him. And to cheer me up, just to be goofy, he turned around, he started singing, and All the Small Things was on the radio, so he was singing it to me. And I don't know, it cheered me up. I don't know, it made me laugh. I was probably 8 years old at that point, so it made me happy. But that was one of my first memories of hearing a song on the radio, and ever since then, Blink has been my favorite band. So again, like I was, at that point, like those were like the Napster days where having to find music. My parents would have never taken me to buy that album in person,
Right.
At another state, they never would have seen that album cover and let me buy it. So, I was listening to music online, and they just became my favorite band ever since. And so I kind of grown up with them, it was, like I said, I was 7 or 8 at that time, and they've been around long enough. I've been very fortunate. They've been around. They're still making music. So their music has changed over time. And obviously I've grown up. So it's cool. It's been kind of a pivotal part of my life in a lot of ways.
Yeah. As this thing sat for over 20 years, did you get any, I guess, idea from the current owner on where this thing was that whole time? I mean, was it just the one owner?
Yeah. So after the video was filmed, it ended up in the hands of a radio station in Sacramento. And I don't know how. I don't know if they purchased it from them. I don't know what happened, because the band didn't actually own the van when it was filmed. It was rented. But there's kind of a story to that too. I think it was more borrowed than rented. But in any case, the radio station in Sacramento ended up with it, and I think they intended to like raffle it off or give it away or something in a contest. And for whatever reason, it just sat in the parking lot of the station. And there was a woman who worked in the same building, and she saw it sit there. She knew the significance of it, and eventually asked, if I can get it running, can I have the van? And they said yes. And so this woman worked on it, got the van running in this parking lot, brought it home to our teenage daughter. And for the next 10 years, it sat in their driveway. But to her, it was like the coolest thing. She's a musician now. I think still living in Sacramento. And that was like her hangout. So all through high school, she was like the girl who owned the rock show van. And it was when her friends would come over, she described it as like her tree house. So her friends would come over and she would hang out in there. And I think she had like inflatable furniture and, it was kind of her spot. So it sat, I don't think it moved. I think it sat in the driveway in South Sacramento for 10 years. And eventually, I think the family left the home and they had to do something with the van. So they took it nearby and they dropped it off at a friend's place. And that was where it sat for the next 10 years. And I think kind of deteriorated there because it just sat in the same spot for a decade. And that was the whole thing. And then we found it and then we shipped it.
Oh my gosh. That is so crazy. Like it just sat in a driveway as a treehouse with inflatable furniture and stuff. Like I would have never have guessed that in a million years.
And Sacramento, no less, which is not close to LA where the video was filmed. And
that's crazy.
Yeah, that was what helped us track it down, actually, is people would comment and say, oh, I used to pass by that driveway every now and then in South Sacramento. And they would remember seeing it there like 10 years ago. And so we kind of knew the general area, and that's how we kind of narrowed it down and figured out where the body shop was.
I can't believe it sat there so long without hitting Blink Reddit or Blink Italia or something.
Yeah.
Like, it took a long time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the body shop had it for 10 years, and then so it probably would have been 2001 to about 2011 is when it was in the driveway.
Okay. Yeah. It didn't end up on anybody's MySpace at the time.
No, there was no MySpace, not even broadband back then. So
the van turns the corner into your neighborhood. You say you were pretty shocked. This is a big moment, but when it showed up, was it in better shape than you thought? Worse? About the same?
It was kind of about the same. Again, like my expectations were very low. I thought it was going to be very, very rough. And it was. I mean, it was in bad shape. The rear door after Mark smashed it into the Miata is wedged the door open, and so water and critters and wind and everything else has gotten in there for the past 20 years. So if that's any indication, yeah, it was rough. But at the same time, like, fun fact, the plan was to turn it into like a camper van, and so we had planned to gut the interior, but it came around the corner, climbed up onto the trailer, lived inside, and it was just so cool that we kind of threw that plan out the window. And we didn't touch the interior at all after that, aside from cleaning it like a lot. We left everything completely original.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what was your goal when you first got it? Was it just to own this thing and keep it in your garage? Was it to share it with other Blink fans? Like, what was it originally?
Yeah, so we actually, when we found it, we tracked it down, contacted the owner, talked to him, had a couple conversations with him, and then we actually passed on it. So Taylor and I talked about it because it was really like, all right, it's going to be cool. Like, we'll have some fun with it, and then it'll sit in the garage, and like a few years later, if it's just sitting there, the magic will kind of fade, and it'll just kind of be this big van taking up the entire garage. And we're not going to know what to do with it, And so we passed. We decided like it would be cool, but not practical at all. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I was thinking about it nonstop. I was like, God, it would just be so cool. I don't know what I'd do with it, but it'd be so cool. So I talked to Taylor, and we discussed it, and we were like, yeah, if it just sits there, it's not worth it. But if we can find a way for other people to enjoy it, and like the world can see it, and people can, fellow Blink fans will have a chance to enjoy it too, then it will make sense. And so the idea that we actually came up with was restore the exterior a little bit, but then totally gut the interior and make it something that people can rent and people can take out, and like, big Blink fans can come and they can actually rent the van for a weekend and, drive out. We have some cool camping spots and hiking places around here. and they can take it for a weekend and camp out in the van. And we thought that would be the coolest thing. And so that was the original plan. Again, we kind of threw that all out as soon as the van came up and I saw how cool the interior was. But yeah, the plan from the get-go was like, we're going to be the ones to restore it, but we want other people to have a chance to see it and enjoy it too. So luckily other people took interest in it. So we had a chance to do that in other ways.
Yeah. Did you plan originally to, I guess, document this process? Because God, your account has just absolutely blown up. I looked the other day, you got over 90,000 followers on Instagram. I'm not on TikTok. I'm assuming that's large too if you're there, but holy crap,
Yeah.
people are following this thing like crazy.
Yeah, it's I always knew I wanted to record it and do something with it. I didn't know how. So we actually made a few videos, and they just kind of showed different parts of the van and us receiving it, just kind of like little short clips and things like that. And then I had this idea, like, all right, what if we turn it into more of a series? So there's actually like part 1, part 2, part 3. And we started doing that, and then people really took notice. I guess it was just enjoyable to watch. It pleased the algorithms, I guess, and it started showing up on people's feeds, and that's when people really started following along, and that was cool. So we always knew we wanted to document it. We knew it was like too cool of a story to not document, but it's also not like really our backgrounds. Like we never, we didn't buy it with the intention of like, let's build a really big following online and let's have all these people subscribe and all this stuff. It was always like, let's restore the van and let's record it and document it along the way. As it turns out, people have been enjoying the content, so we keep posting it.
Yeah, I think it's real nostalgic. Like everybody remembers that music video and that van, and
Yeah.
I think everybody's fully invested in this story at this point. So it sounds like you're going to be busy with restorations and have been. Do you have a mechanic background? I mean, are you into cars, or were you
No.
up shit creek here without a paddle?
Yeah, no, I have no idea what I'm doing. It's we have YouTube and dad knowledge. My dad has been helping a ton, and especially kind of it's not done, but like the home stretch. Our goal was to get it to shows on the 2024 summer tour. So during that like kind of final stretch where it still needed a lot of work, and like we actually had a deadline now, which was the San Antonio show. My dad was driving up like basically every weekend. So he lives in Houston. So he'd drive up sometimes in the morning, but a lot of times the night before. Drive up the night before. We'd get going about 5 a.m. We'd work until about 4:30, 5 o'clock, and then he'd drive home to Houston, the 3 hours back. And we were doing that every weekend. And it was a grind, man. It's not just, I think one surprise I've had is not how much work it needed, but just how difficult the work would be. It's just like backbreaking stuff, man. Again, this isn't my background. I work a desk job, so
Yeah.
it's just a grind, especially with like the Texas heat. It's in the 90s a lot of times. A lot of times it gets to the hundreds, and it's hot in the garage. And especially when we're doing that, plus going to junkyards and getting parts and things like that, man, it's tough. It's hard. So yeah, I don't have a background in working on cars. I like cars. Cars are cool. But mainly like dad knowledge and YouTube is what's kind of brought it back to life.
And yeah, I am not a mechanic by any means. I hate being outside. I hate hot weather. I couldn't imagine. But hey, I mean, it sounds like a positive that came out of this is some bonding, some good old quality time with dad here, who's the real MVP, it sounds like.
Dad is he's the MVP and the internet favorite. I think everybody's forgotten about me. They're just like, just post more videos of dad. But no, that's been my favorite part of it all, man. The unexpected. I'm close with my dad, so like it's there's never this like surprise, like rekindling or anything like that. Like me and my dad have been close my whole life, but we really didn't buy this with like the intention of he and I working on it together. Like I didn't call him beforehand and be like, if I buy this van, like, if I go through with it, do you want to restore it together or something like that? It was more like I got it, and then I called him and I was like, hey, like, how do I restore a car? And he was like, all right, like I'll be there next weekend. Like we got to start somewhere. So we'll start working on it. And that's what we did. And then he kind of got hooked on it, I think. or he just got kind of hooked on hanging out. And so he started driving up all the time. And I mean, my dad's in his 70s, man. He busts his ass. Like I talked about, like, it's hard for me with those long days and the heat and all that. That gets to me, my early 30s. My dad's in my 70s, man. I mean, he just grinds. And he doesn't bitch. He doesn't complain about anything, man. He's tough. So he's, like, all told, he's probably worked on this harder than anybody else, just by means of, the time he spent driving back and forth, and, how it's more difficult for him than it is for me, and all the knowledge he brings to the table. So he's done a lot, man. It's been the coolest part of the project, aside from the followers and the shout outs and the bands and from the band, and people kind of getting involved in the story and the shows and all that. Hanging out with my dad has been cool.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That's really cool. I'm just trying to envision that that first phone call. Hey, Dad, about a 25-year-old piece of shit van that doesn't work from a blink-182 video. Can you come over for the next 8 weekends straight and help me rebuild it completely from scratch?
Yeah. So I showed him the video before. I was visiting for, I don't know what the holiday was, but I put the Rock Show on, on YouTube, and showed it to him, and both him and my mom, and they're like, okay. That's what you bought? It wasn't there yet. It hadn't arrived. They're like, okay, that's the thing that you're going to start working on. Like, yeah, it's cool, right? I'm like, mm-hmm.
It looks like it's a 1985 Dodge Ram B250. Is that accurate?
Yep.
Are you having trouble finding parts for it? I mean, did anything work on it?
Yeah, it actually ran a little bit. So it would start. It was rough, but it would start. It would kick, and it actually made it up the driveway. Once we got it into the garage, we didn't dare move it for a very long time. So it sat in one spot for a long time. But yeah, finding parts, it's been a mix. Like, there are some things that are just impossible to find. And so we've actually been to a couple of junkyards and gotten some good stuff from there. Even those can be hard to find, because, like, of course, when something ends up in a junkyard, it's there for parts before it ultimately gets smashed. Not a lot of people need parts for an 85 250. So even though it's kind of a mass-produced car, it's 40 years old, so there's just not a lot of them around. So that's been tough. But then there's also some parts that are just kind of standard and can be found easily. But, like, one example is the fuel tank. We repaired it because it was leaking. It had, I don't know if it was from the crash the day of the shoot or what, but it was damaged, and so it just leaked gas out of the corner. And you cannot find a new gas tank. It sounds like a really common thing, but you can't find one that's that size. You can find smaller ones, different materials, things like that. But that's been impossible to find. So we repaired it, and it's held up. Kind of a questionable repair. Got some grief online for that repair, but it's working. So, fine if you ask me.
Yeah, so you mentioned taking it to a couple Texas shows. I saw you were out, and man, I tell you, I think I saw more people posting pictures at the Rock Show van than in the concert. What did it take to get it there? I mean, did you drive that there, and then did you just pull up to the parking lot, or did you have to, like, sync with the venue? How did that all work out?
Yeah, so we got news shortly before that show that the van needed a new transmission. And so it runs. We actually drove it to the shop. We had driven it. It passed the state inspection. It has license plates, a whole 9 yards. But something wasn't quite right. And it basically, you have to give it a lot of power for it to start moving. And it you can feel it slip. And so we took it in, and the verdict was it needs a new transmission. And so the guy didn't even want me to drive it home. I did. I was like, I'm not towing it home from here. But we decided it'd be best to trailer it to the shows, bring it to our Airbnb, and then drive it from our Airbnb to the shows. So short distances, it's good to go. And actually, after that concert, it got us and 8 of our friends in the back home safely. So that was kind of a scary experience. It was like, I know this isn't going to last forever. One day it's just going to stop moving. And I was just praying the whole way home. I was like, don't make it right now, with like 8 people and everybody, like 8 people in the back, everybody leaving the venue at the same time. Everybody's honking at us, waving at us on the way out. I was like, just get us home this one time. So, that was the San Antonio show. So, prior to the show, I reached out to people at the Frostbank Center and also Dickies Arena in Fort Worth. And it was just some cold emails, some cold phone calls. People connected me to the right people, contacted a lot of the wrong people. But they thought the project was cool. And once they realized I wasn't crazy, like this is a legit thing, like this is something that people attending your venue would really enjoy. They actually got approval. So they got approval. I didn't get a whole lot of the details, but they actually reached out to the tour, and the tour approved us to be at the venue. So that was really cool, because I was planning on just setting up in the parking lot and doing whatever and hoping for the best. But this was way better. So we had kind of our own area coned off in the parking lot in San Antonio. And so that worked out really well, because people got to come and see it. They didn't have to kind of scout us out in the parking lot, figure out where we were. And we had kind of our own nice shaded area under some trees right in front of the venue. So that was cool. It worked out well. And we got to set up a tent and stuff like that. We had plenty of space, and it was fun. But yeah, that was San Antonio. Then the following morning, so obviously we went to the show, had a great time, came back, got like 2 hours of sleep, headed to Fort Worth the next day for the next show. And that was cool. That was a really sweet setup. It was really beautiful, actually. So we were set up kind of on the east side of the venue, where they have what they call like the plaza, and they have like a really nice lawn area. You get like a nice breeze because you're sitting on top of the hill. On one side is the venue, which is a very nice looking venue. On the other side, you have kind of a skyline view of downtown Fort Worth. And so we were actually there. We were inside the gates. So we kind of set up at 4 p.m. The gates opened at 5, and then people were able to come in and hang out and drink and listen to live music before the gates opened, before the doors to the venue opened. And that was really cool, man. It was weird, kind of a weird juxtaposition of like this old beat up van that I was, in my mind, still like old, beat up and rusted, because that's how it has been for a very long time. It looks really good now, but it was weird all of a sudden, like in the span of just like a couple of weeks, it went from looking like terrible to now being kind of like this really beautiful setup with kind of the skyline in the background, kind of like a nice breeze blowing, and like we had our nice setup at the tent, and it was cool. It was cool seeing in that setting, and I had some really cool photos from it too. So yeah, those street shows were a lot of fun.
Were you blown away by the amount of people and support you were getting? Dude, it seemed like there were so many people coming by, taking pictures. People got engaged in front of it, I saw.
Yeah. We're there
a big
for like
deal.
5 minutes and someone popped the question in front of the van. I was like, what is going on? Like, I'm still like opening my first beer and like setting up the tent, and like dudes on one knee over here. I was like, oh my God, this is cool. It was cool, man. It was a cool turnout. I don't know how many thousands of people we met, but yeah, people came up. People were very organized. It was just like a single file line. We didn't start the line. We just pulled up, and yeah, it was just like single file. And I don't know that the line ever got, hundreds of people long or anything like that, but the line never died down. Like there was a line in Fort Worth 4.5 hours. And in San Antonio for 3 hours. So it was just people the entire time, and it was cool. And we tried to set it up so people could have photo ops, but then also hang out. So we let people sit in it. A few weeks before the first show, we had a custom made seat put in the back seat, like a bench seat, because it didn't have a seat. If you remember from the video, it was just Travis sitting in like a lazy boy recliner in the back. So we had that. Actually started having it made like a couple months ago, and then it got finished shortly before the show. So we put that in there. We put a guitar amp in there. We had like this fridge. We have a portable power supply. So it was a pretty sweet setup. So people got to come in, play the guitar, hang out, take pictures, and sit in the driver's seat, kind of replicate some of the kind of iconic photos from that shoot and things like that. So it was cool. It was a really good time.
Man, that's so awesome. I hope to see this thing. Like, what's the future plans for it a year from now? Are you hoping to hit every Blink show, or what do you plan on doing with it?
We'll definitely be at more next tour. This tour, we're still scouting some out. So we kind of have our eyes on some of the Midwest shows, just because those are a little more accessible for us. You know, if we go to like the East Coast, we have to go way up north, and like you got to get the van there, you got to get it back. But the kind of the Midwest shows like St. Louis, Milwaukee, Detroit, those are Indianapolis. Those are kind of like bunched together well enough that it's about a 14-hour drive there. Then we can hop, and it's, you know, 3-4 hours to each show. So we're gonna try to make it there. I don't know, but even if we don't make it there this tour, I think next tour we'll kind of have a lot more time to plan for it. Assuming there is another tour, sure hope so.
Yeah.
We'll have more time to plan for it, and we'll try to hit the majority of the shows on that tour.
Yeah, I'll be at some of those Midwest shows. I hope you're there.
Nice.
Try
Yeah,
to
which one's
make
he going to? Maybe we'll
try
be
to
there.
make St. Louis and Indy. I think I'm going to St. Louis, Indy, and is it Lexington? Yeah, I think Lexington.
Yeah, in Kentucky.
I'm planning
Yeah.
on hitting those.
Sick. I think our most likely will be Indy. That one's kind of like the best balance of like not too far away and also close to the other shows. So yeah, we might see you at that one.
Yeah, I just can't believe the lengths you've gone through, man, just to like even getting permits. And I didn't realize that the band or, you know, the tour had to sign off on it for it to be there. I mean, you've jumped through a lot of hoops, man. It ended up in the right hands at the end of the day, for sure.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's special to us, and like I said, like before we even started on this, the goal was to get other people to see it. That sounds so like philanthropic, you know, and it's not my style. Like I'm not like, you know, we did it for you guys. But really, we knew from the get go, like this is just going to be like a big kind of thing that sits in our garage if we don't share it with people. So that was kind of the mission from the start. So we had to, once the tour started, we had to kind of get our asses in gear and make sure people could see it. So it's working out.
Yeah, as far as the band goes, you know, I've seen like Tom shared your reel the other day. Mark had acknowledged it at one point on Discord, essentially saying it was a video prop. You know, they didn't own it per se. But I was kind of surprised. I saw Travis had commented acting like he drove that to and from rehearsal. Like, what have you heard from the band, if anything, on this or any history surrounding it?
Yeah, so the history before the shoot is still kind of a mystery. Um, the weird part, so like you said, Marcus said it was rented for the shoot, but what never made sense to me is like he also said that you know, the owner was very upset when he crashed it, and like that part didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because if you rent something, like if I just go down to, you know, enterprise rentals car or something like that, the owner's not going to be there. You know?
Right.
And then when Travis commented and said he used to drive it from the Inland Empire to San Diego, it kind of made a lot more sense. It kind of makes me think that maybe Travis had some connection to it and they rented it, but it was from like a friend of the band or a friend of Travis's or something like that. That's why it would make a lot more sense that the owner was there for the shoot, and that they let him do things like put stickers on the side of the van. You know, like again, if I go down to Hertz and put stickers on the side of the car, like that's not cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, the history of it, I think it's been tied to the van, even though, or tied to the band in some ways, even if they didn't own it, even if the band itself or the record label itself didn't own the van. I think it's kind of been around. That's my best guess. But yeah, that's kind of the history of it.
Yeah, because if you rent it, I mean, even if you wreck it, insurance is going to cover it and no one's going to care too much, would be my thought.
Yeah. Yeah, and then also like obviously the radio station bought it afterwards. So like who did they buy it from? You know, was it a friend of a friend kind of thing? Did you really buy it from like a rental place? So it's a mystery. I if I ever meet the band, I'm going to ask them.
Yeah, that's really
I really
interesting
want to know.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as the band like seeing it or visiting it or whatever, I mean, if you could have a dream scenario, have you thought about like, do you just want them to see it in person and get to kick it with them for a minute, or any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean that's the dream, you know. Like first and foremost, they're my favorite band. You know, it's been that way for a long time. So I'd love to meet them. I'd love to get some questions answered, like those that we just talked about. Yeah, just love for them to kick it, and you know, I recognize that like to them it was, you know, it was kind of a prop in a shoot, right? It's something they use for a day. But at the same time, I know they have a lot of appreciation for things like old guitars that they've used on tour, and you know, you look at like the VIP thing that they have on tour right now. It's got a lot of old, you know, posters and memorabilia from the years from the band. So I know they appreciate that kind of stuff. And we got I don't know if you saw in San Antonio, we got a shout out on stage at the show. So that was really cool. We got some cheers from the crowd too, and that was really cool. So yeah, I mean, we'd love to meet the band one day. Just have them see it, have them sit in it one more time, and check it out, and yeah, just kind of kick it with them and chill with them for a little bit. That would be really cool.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool if they just come out and just say what up and take a picture in front of it or whatever. I mean, I feel like Mark would at least get a kick out of seeing that. I don't know about Tom too much. Travis, if he drove it to and from rehearsal, I mean, shit, he should be pretty close to it.
Yeah, you think so? And I do think they care about it. I think they care about it. So it'll probably happen one day. If it never did, that would be okay too. But yeah, I mean, they all seem like super cool guys. I never met them, but I think they care about it. I think they'd like to see it one day.
When I was thinking about this not too long ago, I was for some reason envisioning it like at the Punk Rock Museum as an exhibit that people can go in and eat lunch or something. Is that something that would ever cross your mind, or you've ever thought about a piece like this?
Yeah, I think one day I hope it ends up someplace really cool, like the Punk Rock Museum. I don't have any intention of selling it anytime soon, but I also know like probably won't pass it to my grandkids one day. So there will be a day and time when it's time to get rid of it. And yeah, Punk Rock Museum I think would be a really cool place for it. Takes up a lot of real estate. It's a pretty big van, so might have to find the right place and right owner for it. But even if we could donate it to them for a while, so it could be on exhibit for a bit, and then we could take it back or something, that would be really cool. I'd be down for that. But yeah, I think one day, I want it to end up in the right hands, someone who cares about it, and hopefully someone who will let other people enjoy it as well. So
yeah, I see people do that at museums or exhibits all the time, like on loan from this owner. People get to enjoy it, and then when they want it back, they can get it back.
yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, Andrew, I appreciate your time on this. I've got 2 more questions for you, and then I'll get you out of here. I'm just curious. Right. Favorite Blink album all time?
The right answer is Take Off Your Pants and Jacket for me.
I agree.
But I think it's Enema. I think if I had to listen to one on repeat for the rest of my life, it would be Enema of the State.
Okay. Favorite Blink song all time?
Yeah. Yeah. Again, the right answer is The Rock Show. God, is it The Rock Show? I don't know. There's so many. Like I said, all the small things will always have a special place in my heart because of the memories with my brother. Fuck it. I'll say The Rock Show. My favorite song of all time.
Got to. I feel like you have to, man. You've got the van, for God's sake. All right. Yep. Let our listeners know where to find you at. I know you're on Instagram, and as well as I saw there was a sign asking folks to chime in on the new transmission. So if folks are able to donate and help the cause and get this van to a city near you, where can they get that info at?
Yeah, so we're on Instagram and TikTok. It's at therockshowvan. We have a YouTube as well, but primarily those two. We have so many people have asked to donate. And so when we found out about the transmission, we were like, all right, let's give people a chance if they want to. So we have links to those as well on Instagram and TikTok, so you can find them there.
Cool. All right, man. I really enjoyed this. I appreciate you jumping on the podcast, dude.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no problem. See you, Andrew.
Cool. See ya.